Howdy, y'all! Alright there guys, and welcome back to another video. If you couldn't tell by the intro, we're going to be talking about Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. Now, before we even get into it, I just want to tell a little story that some of you might already remember. Back in around January, February time this year, this movie actually got leaked on Twitter. Like this movie got leaked, and like loads of people saw this movie like 6 months before it was actually supposed to be released. And I remember this because I remember seeing this movie being posted all over Twitter at the very start of the year. I didn't watch the movie back then. I could have if I wanted to, but I didn't. I waited for it to actually release on Netflix about a month ago. But from the people that did watch the movie all the way back then, they said it was hot garbage, to be frank. They said it wasn't very good. And now that I've seen the movie for myself, now I actually like all of the 3 previous SpongeBob movies. The 2004 original, which we covered earlier on the channel this year. 2015's Sponge Out of Water. I liked that. And even 2020's Sponge on the Run. I actually didn't mind that one either. But for the first time, I feel like we've managed to find a SpongeBob movie that's truly not very good. As I don't have very high opinions of this movie. I didn't think it was very good. Some of the jokes in this movie really do not hit. A couple of them do hit, like there was right at the end of the movie, there's a joke where Patrick says sponge spill on aisle 5 because there's a bunch of mini SpongeBobs on the ground. I liked that one, and a joke where SpongeBob puts on a monocle and talks in a like really rich snooty voice when talking to Sandy. Those 2 jokes were about the only 2 that actually made me laugh, that I thought they were actually funny. All the other jokes just don't hit. The reason the Bikini Bottom even needs saving to begin with is because right at the beginning, after Sandy has a big sing-song with all the residents of the Bikini Bottom, these giant construction claws come down, engulf Bikini Bottom and pull it up to the surface. So Sandy and SpongeBob together start making their way up to the surface. Of course, there's ways Sandy's gone to the surface. They've walked all the way up to the surface. Sandy's had a rocket ship, a jetpack. How about a geyser? That's how they make their way up to the surface this time around. And they also land on a plane that's flying from Houston to Galveston, which is where they need to be in Texas to go to this lab called Boots that Sandy actually works for, and apparently was spying on Bikini Bottom the entire time. She didn't know that's what she was actually doing. She didn't think that at all, but that's what ended up happening. SpongeBob and Sandy finally reach the surface, and they land on the plane, and then they jump off without any parachutes because Sandy is her own parachute. But they end up getting caught in what Sandy calls a Texas twister, which is actually just a tornado. So they get flung way off course, and then they get ambushed by some snakes with sheriff hats on. But instead of the snakes winning, which to begin with they actually do start kicking SpongeBob and Sandy's asses, Sandy's parents and pretty much her entire family show up. Her mom, her dad, her grandma, her older brother Randy, which is the only member of Sandy's family that actually gets named in this movie. The rest of them don't. And then Sandy's younger brother and younger sister as well. Weird that her nieces from one of the other SpongeBob episodes didn't also show up in this movie, but they don't. And they actually are part of the Cheek's family circus. Yes, Sandy's family are part of the circus. And she was originally supposed to be part of it as well. But of course, her love for science overtook that, and that's why she went to live in Bikini Bottom. Sandy does manage to help convince her parents to get her going to Galveston with SpongeBob. And meanwhile, the whole villains of this movie is this woman called Tsunami, who actually turns out to be a robot. This movie makes such little sense the vast majority of the time. This movie just did not make sense at all at points. The overarching plot is that that Tsunami and her company wanted to take Bikini Bottom out of the surface and out of the ocean, take into the surface in order to make the residents of Bikini Bottom be able to breathe air instead of water, and then feed them some sort of chemical-infused food that would turn them into the sea pets. Because Tsunami herself said that when she was a little girl, she wanted to have pets that came from the sea, and she couldn't. But instead of having an actual little girl, it's just the body, essentially, of a little girl with her current face on top of it. It looks so weird. She's such an odd character. Definitely the worst villain of any SpongeBob movie so far. So she tries to... the first three residents are Patrick, Squidward and Mr. Krabs. And Patrick doesn't really know what's going on. Everyone else pretty much does, but Patrick doesn't, because it wouldn't be Patrick otherwise. SpongeBob and Sandy end up going straight into the main lab of the main lab of the Boots Company. Sandy gets locked up in a cage, and they start multiplying SpongeBob at an alarming rate. And Squidward says, "Just kill me now." I know, right? Squidward having to live with having to live with one SpongeBob is bad enough. Him having to live with hundreds, he could not handle that. So who comes to save the day? Sandy's family arrive on a Texas Twister. Quite funny that they call it a Texas Twister, and the Twister sequel or remake Twisters just came out recently as well. They come in and help out. Tsunami is defeated, and her head ends up in this mutated fish that she keeps in the main room of the lab. Another odd choice, in my opinion. Phoebe and Kyle, who also work there, are two very, very dumb characters. And what is the SpongeBob movie franchise obsession with human characters? Every single SpongeBob movie has had human characters. The first movie had the Cyclops and David Hasselhoff, although those were actually good. David Hasselhoff in a SpongeBob movie was actually great. Sponge Out of Water's second half of the movie literally takes place on the surface, with of course Antonio Banderas' character being the main human character of that movie. Keanu Reeves and Snoop Dogg appear in Sponge on the Run, and now we have these new characters in the Sandy Cheeks movie. They end up managing to defeat her and they manage to get Bikini Bottom back to the ocean, and there's something that really I don't really know what the word is, but like the scale of how small Bikini Bottom actually is was on full display. It's probably due to the whole stop motion animation that they used again for this movie, just like they did for Sponge on the Run. It seems like this is the type of animation they're going to just continue using for the rest for every future SpongeBob movie, instead of the regular 2D animation that they always use for the show. So Bikini Bottom is brought back to the ocean, and all is well in the world once again. I know this is a much shorter summary than pretty much any other movie video I've done, but it's like that's basically it. Bikini Bottom gets captured. SpongeBob and Sandy set off to Texas to go and get it back. They take on the human villains of the movie, and they send Bikini Bottom back down to the ocean where it should be. Yeah, this is definitely the worst SpongeBob movie that's been made so far. Which is a shame, because the only truly great SpongeBob movie was the first one from 20 years ago. The general consensus is every time a SpongeBob movie releases, it's worse than the previous one. But apparently the next SpongeBob movie, that is not the case. Because just before I started recording this video, literally a minute before I started recording this video, I saw that the Plankton movie, because that of course had been announced, the Plankton movie had been leaked exactly the same way that this movie got leaked. And what people have said about it is no one's managed to watch the entirety of this movie, but from what they have seen, the Plankton movie is so much better than this one. So that makes me excited for whenever the Plankton movie does actually release, because it's apparently better than this one, so we're actually having a SpongeBob movie that gets better than the previous one for the very first time ever. But that concludes our look at Let's Talk About Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and until we meet again, farewell.